Welcome to the Bookistrator, where I share the stories I love through illustration. The book I'll be talking about today is called Spindle and Dagger by J. Anderson Coates, a historical fiction young adult novel set in Wales in 1109. This book was such a random find for me. Like most books I read, I found it at my local library. I was walking through the stacks of books in the young adult section, scanning spines for interesting titles, when I noticed this one. I wondered if it was maybe a Sleeping Beauty retelling, with the word spindle in the title. But when I read the inside flap, I was pleasantly surprised. I love stories with Welsh connections, whether that's as a setting, with a Welsh character, mythology inspired, or even just a character's name. One thing I need to make sure and mention is that this book does deal with kidnapping, child abuse, and SA. I will not be talking deeply about any of these, but they will be mentioned. If those are triggering topics for you, you might want to skip this video. With that said, let's get into the art. Alright, right off the bat here, don't get attached to this drawing. I worked on this for maybe an hour, a half an hour. I could look it up, but I'm not going to. I worked on this piece for a bit late one evening, and then went to bed. When I opened up the file again the next day, there was only a blank canvas. What a delightful way to start a project, right? As I demonstrate here with my little doodle. Anyway, let's get into the real piece. Have you ever told a lie? Of course you have. We all have. But have you ever told a lie to save your life? A lie so risky that one slip up could cost you everything? That's the main tension in our story today. Elen, a young girl born in Wales in the late 1000s or early 1100s, is living a harsh but happy life with her family on their farm. When they are attacked by a roving group made up of a prince and his warband, everyone in her family is killed. She is assaulted and about to be killed herself when she forms a clever lie. Owain ap Cadwgan, the prince and son of the king of Powys, cannot be killed, not by blade, nor blow, nor poison. Owain ap Cadwgan has the protection of Saint Elen, as long as he keeps her namesake safe from harm and near him always. It's now 3 years into their deal, and Elen is still alive. She is clothed, fed, and safe from other warbands. She also shares the prince's bed, always by his side, as his lucky token. Fearing nothing, with Saint Elen's promise on his side, Prince Owain kidnaps a Norman lord's wife and children, holding them hostage. This begins another war for the kingdom of Powys that sends Elen, the Norman lord's wife, Nest, Owain and his men traveling from castle to castle and even on to Ireland to avoid and aid in the conflict. As tensions rise, Elen's lies begin to unravel. But in Nest and her children, she begins to see a different way to live. One not steeped in fear and lies. One where she could care for the 3 children she has come to love deeply. This story is dark and harrowing, but it is ultimately about survival, and maybe even hope. When I started brainstorming ideas for this piece, all I could think about was Elen herself. I primarily like to draw people, so creating an image with her at the focal point made a lot of sense to me. In the doodles on the left, you can kind of see my thought process. Hands are described several times throughout the story. The hands of Saint Elen keeping both Owain and Elen herself safe. People grabbing Elen in anger, lust, joy, as a friend or for comfort or to tell her off. I knew I had something cool with the idea of Elen surrounded by hands, each one portraying a different motive. One with an unwanted caress, which would be Prince Owain's hand. One as more of a wanted comfort, the hand of a friend of hers named Rhys. And the last a more aggressive hand, attached to a man named Aignan, who was Owain's right-hand man. In my sketching, I realized I didn't want to give these men faces or bodies. Just the hands they reach out to Elen, for better or worse. And then Elen herself, simply taking it. She's terrified during most of the story, fearful someone will catch her in the lie, scared someone will get drunk one night and hurt her, scared for her new friend Nest and her children. Elen to me is above all a very patient character. She's never rash in her decisions. She's careful and calculating. She's needed to be to live this long under Owain and his men's thumbs. And while of course this is the idea I went with, as you are seeing it being drawn on the screen right now. There was one other idea I considered going with that I want to bring up. Ellen helps the Norman lady nest in the story with her 3 very young children. I don't want to say much about this because I hate spoilers, but I had a gentle idea appear as I was ideating. A simple one, with Ellen surrounded and being hugged by these 3 children. Her hopes for the future, instead of horrible current circumstances. It was a lovely idea that I gave a lot of thought to. Then why, I can hear you ask, did you go with the sad idea? Well, my friends, I like to draw sad things. I usually resonate the strongest with a movie during a sad scene, during a tragically but beautifully written song, or in emotional illustrations. But I also feel like a sadder, more sinister piece fit the tone of the book itself better. Hélène has a lot of hard experiences coming for her, and I didn't want to completely negate them by focusing on the little bit of joy she finds. I think both are necessary, which is why I included 3 sets of hands in this piece. 2 for her aggressors and 1 for a friend. As I'm writing my script, though, I kind of wish that I'd made that hand into nests, not Reese's, but oh well. When I first drew Hélène in my sketchbook, I imagined her with 2 thick braids, which you'll see on the left. It made her seem so young to me, which she is. But as I was starting the underdrawing, which you saw at the beginning of this video, I got the idea to have Owain's hand not caressing her face, but playing with her hair. She's his toy, his magical charm, not an actual human. I struggled a bit trying to get just the right pose for that hand, but I think I got there in the end. It looks playful, but her expression makes it clear that it is unwanted. I also wanted to make the 3 hands distinct from one another. Not just in their posing, but in their skin tone and what little you can see of each wrist. Owain has an ornate wristlet, thick and vibrant in color, showing his obvious wealth. He also has the tannest skin of the 3, due to his constant marauding through the countryside. Rhys's hand just below is more simply adorned, with a cuffed sleeve and paler skin from being inside more often. And Aignan on the bottom is the one we can see the least. I imagined him wearing a leather bracer, as he is a warrior first and foremost, traveling alongside Owain. Hélène herself is not given a lot in the way of description, a major pet peeve of mine. She's described with dark hair, which I made a pretty warm tone, and the one outfit she wears that is mentioned frequently is a deep red. It's a gift from Owain, one that holds a lot of meaning and complicated emotions throughout the story. While I was doing research for the attire, I found most dresses at the time were long-sleeved with long hems. Vibrant colors like this would have been incredibly expensive and time-consuming to make. It would have had some kind of stitching or embroidery along the front, but because this is a side view, it felt less important to add. I also wanted that red color to tie both him and Ellen together. For Owain's cuff, I researched jewelry found in Wales during the time period, and cobbled several pieces I found together to make this one. Don't panic, I'm not starting over. As I looked at this piece over several days, I realized I'd accumulated quite a few illustrations for this channel that were a character on a simple white background. I'm not going to stop doing that, I just don't want every piece to be that. I try not to be too samey with my art, but it will happen sometimes, of course. But as I looked at this one, I realized there was something simple I could do to put the characters in a scene without really drawing a scene. What did people hang on their walls in medieval Europe? Something cool and designy and flat. Tapestries. So I did some research and got out my symmetry tool. It's kind of sloppy, but I was going for background with this, not focal point. I messed with the colors of the tapestry for a while too, trying to push it back and keep Hélène as the focal point. I liked the green, but it was feeling too Christmas colors coded to me. So as I like to do, I desaturated the colors and made everything a bit cold, to contrast the warmth and the foreground colors. But to actually make it feel like she was in front of it, I added a shadow here to give it some depth. Just a bit. I didn't want her to feel like a sticker. At the start of this video, I mentioned how delighted I was to find a book that took place in Wales. I come from a long line of Welsh miners, farmers, and singers. And while my family and I were all born in North America for the past couple of generations, there's something about my Welsh heritage that has always called out to me. Maybe it's my love of music, or a good story, or my obsession with dragons. But when I started college and discovered that they offered Welsh as one of the many language options to learn, I signed up immediately. I'm far from fluent, but this new knowledge of mine is a little nod to the people who came before me, the ones who fought so hard for their independence and are still fighting today to be able to speak and learn their own language. I'm proud to be a part of that movement, in my own small way, and I love passing on the knowledge I have learned to anyone who will listen. And a huge shout out to my friend Naomi, who helped make sure that I was pronouncing the characters' names right. This book is not for everyone. In fact, I banned my mother from reading it. It's dark and heavy, with sensitive topics discussed on nearly every page, but it rings with truth and hope. Its characters are nuanced and full of spirit. This was a lovely surprise for me that day in the library, and I'm so glad I gave this little book a chance. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate the support and the fact you'll let me ramble on about things I'm interested in. I hope to see you all in the next one. Bye!